So thank you again for being on the call today. We are talking all about marketing and we're focusing that mainly on your startup and your idea. So if you don't have a startup, this is still a great place to be. And if you do, then this is definitely the place for you to be. So on the screen, you'll see two persons on there. So this conversation that we're having today is sponsored in part by two organizations. So we have Georgia State University and Georgia Tech. And so Dr. Jennifer Scherer couldn't be on the call today, but she is the Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute. So if you're a Georgia State student, then this conversation that we're having today is part of a program that they have going on. But if you are a Georgia State student, please go ahead and check out eni.gsu.edu. They have a ton of opportunities available for you if you're interested in innovation and entrepreneurship. But that's not the only thing that they have. They also have great partnerships that allow them to expand into the community. And so if you're not a Georgia State student, then this is still a website that you want to visit and check out the different things that they have going on related to innovation and entrepreneurship. Now, on the other side of that, we have Georgia Tech. And so I work in the area of innovation and entrepreneurship under the provost office at Georgia Tech. And so you can check out our website at innovation.gatech.edu. And so we have a number of different things that's occurring that we want you to be a part of. And in your invitation email, you also got a link to our newsletter that you can sign up for. We send a weekly newsletter out to tell you all of the different opportunities available both on campus at Georgia Tech, but in and around Atlanta as well, and in the wider United States. And so feel free to take advantage of that and to stay up to date and informed of the different things that are happening in and around your community of innovation and entrepreneurship. Today we have the fantastic Holly. Holly works at Engage, and we just want to talk a little bit about who Holly is. So Holly Beilin of Engage Ventures is the Director of Communications and Community at Engage. She's an accomplished technology journalist and a media relations strategist with experience at early and growth stage technology companies. And so I actually met Holly a couple of years ago at when she was working at Hype. That is a fantastic online journal in Atlanta that covers everything you can think of related to innovation and entrepreneurship. And so I'm going to give a plug for Hype at the moment. And so do your Google search on that and become a part of the startup community in Georgia. And so, Holly, I'm going to hand it over to you to take it away in terms of our conversation today about marketing your idea or startup. I'm going to stop sharing at the moment.
Beautiful. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this. This is one of my favorite topics, and we'll go into why. If I share my screen, will I be able to see chat or no?
No, but I can probably not, but I can actually pull out anything that you say so that I can
Okay.
do a split screen.
And I kind of want to encourage people to just speak up. I'm fine with that. There are some points in the presentation that I'll ask for contributions, and I tried to use some really fun marketing examples, so I hope that folks will feel comfortable doing that. All right, sharing. So I share screen in settings.
At the top, you should see this
Ah,
TV box.
yes. Okay. Share screen. Click here. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna flip through like this. So you'll monitor chat, and folks, like, really, I'm gonna ask some questions. Please just chime in. If you talk over each other, it's okay. So we're gonna go into marketing your startup today. And as we'll talk about, marketing is about a lot more than just advertising or PR or social media, like most people think of it, but it's really around how to convince people to want, buy, and share your product. So first, just a quick background on me. I studied journalism and public policy, but really my background is in technology journalism and technology communications. I started working at technology startups pretty soon after school, after a quick stint in policy. And I moved to Atlanta in 2013 to work for a digital health company, a digital health startup called ShareCare, which is based in Buckhead. My first experience at a startup was extremely fast moving. So in the 3 years that I was there, I was the second communications hire. and we acquired 5 companies. In that time, we did so many product launches, and we raised 3 major funding rounds, and I was kind of the communications lead on a lot of those, which was an amazing experience and definitely threw me into the startup world feet first and you know, hit the ground running and all the other cliches you want to use. So then I took over the editor-in-chief role at Hypopotamus, or Hype, and I put that link in the chat for anyone who wants to check that out. Hype is a startup and technology publication focused solely on the Southeast. So it's based in Atlanta and it's very Atlanta-centric, but under my 3-year editorial lead there, we expanded into covering 7 states across the region. So down to Alabama, up to the Carolinas, North and South, and then over to Louisiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Great experience, grew the editorial staff, got to cover a ton of the companies here in the city. So everyone up to a large cabbage and down to, I remember for those of you at Georgia Tech, my first time meeting the team at Sora Schools, which I believe is a CreateX company or was a startup exchange company, 2 students at Georgia Tech. They just raised $2 million in a seed round from some of the top investors in the country. So got to work with startups from small to large. Currently, I work with startups at Engage. So Engage is an enterprise venture fund. NAMI on the call also works with me there, as well as quite a few other folks at Georgia Tech and outside of Georgia Tech. That's aligned with Georgia Tech, and it's backed by 12 of the largest enterprises in really the world, but most of them headquartered here in Atlanta. So folks like Home Depot, Cox Enterprises, AT&T, UPS, companies like that, working with enterprise startups that want to work with and earn contracts with those companies. I also work with a number of earlier stage startups at organizations like Goody Nation and Techstars Atlanta. So very entrenched in the startup world. It kind of got its hold of me and I've never looked back. So here's our roadmap for what we'll start talking about during this presentation. And keep in mind, marketing is huge. It's a very broad discipline, and we'll just touch on these things, but this should hopefully give you an overview. So what is marketing? Why is it important? We'll go through some definitions and some departments that touch marketing. It's not just the marketing department. It's not just the CMO and the marketing team. We're going to talk about branding, which is an intangible but exceptionally important thing. And, hundreds of millions of dollars are spent on simply acquiring brands. We'll talk about your marketing strategy. So things like positioning your message, segmenting your customers, and then targeting them. We'll determine your marketing mix, which is kind of the activities that engage in your marketing strategy. And then we'll talk about what I call ramen marketing, which is scrappy tactics for startups that don't have a ton of money to spend on advertising. So first we'll go into what marketing actually is. Marketing is a deliberate creation and communication of value, which is intended to influence consumer decisions. There's a lot of definitions of marketing. This is absolutely not the only one. The reason I like this definition of marketing is because most people think of just this second function, the communication of value. They think about advertising, they think about PR, they think about media relations. Marketing is really also the creation of value. And that means that it touches a whole lot beyond just the traditional marketing department. Marketing actually touches product creation and product development. So figuring out what your target customers want out of your product should inform your product strategy. Marketing helps you figure out what are the new features that customers want. What are your target customers? Who are you speaking to? How should you tweak your product strategy? How much money should you spend in customer support? Do your customers value that? Do they need customer success? Marketing really touches kind of the entire funnel of a company, the entire life cycle of a company, and it's super important to acknowledge that creation of value piece. So as I said, marketing should drive sales. It should inform the product team. It should support customer success and customer support, and it even boosts recruitment and hiring. So a big strategy by companies is spending marketing dollars or spending time from the marketing team on articulating the value of their brand to potential employees. So think about things like companies talking about how they have good work-life balance or how they offer certain benefits. That's all marketing in an effort to drive value for the company. So let's go into some definitions. So there's organic marketing. Organic marketing is anything that doesn't have a direct cost. And I want to go through some examples, and then we'll pull up some sort of fun examples that you might be familiar with, examples from real life. But these are things like word of mouth marketing, social media, but the organic part of things. So not paid Facebook or Twitter or other advertising, but just organic posting. Content marketing, search engine optimization, which we'll go into later, but it's the value of making your brand show up in search engine results on Google. Public relations, PR, also called earned media. So that's getting journalists to write about you in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times or in Hippopotamus. Obviously, those are comparable. It's educational resources, so things like webinars or like educational blog posts, and then it's hosting events. Something that's important about organic marketing that I want to point out is the name and the definition are somewhat deceiving in that these things are not free. It's not free for a company to generate really good quality content marketing. You have to hire a team to do that. You have to pay employees. You may have to pay an outside agency. You have to maybe pay a graphic designer to do things. So these aren't necessarily free things. Same with social media, right? You have to hire a social media strategist, maybe a social media coordinator. Educational resources, webinars take a lot of financial resources and time to develop, but they don't have a direct cost. You're not directly paying for them to get, for example, advertised in the Wall Street Journal. These are articles that are written in the Wall Street Journal. So let's go through some examples of organic marketing. And I tried to use some fun real life examples here. So my favorite one is, does anyone remember, and just unmute and say yes if you do, but the IHOB endeavor? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's it's not a startup, but it is one of my absolute favorite examples of successful organic targeting. So I don't have the statistic up here, but when I was looking this up, for those of you that don't know, IHOP, International House of Pancakes, went on a 2-week-long social media campaign saying IHOB, we're about to change our name to IHOB. They did not say what IHOB was, but they came up with all these really clever sort of graphics and slogans and puns. It generated so much traffic for the brand that it literally was on the nightly news. It showed up on NBC and CNN, everyone speculating what IHOB was. And they finally revealed that IHOP was about to serve burgers. IHOP, International House of Burgers. Clearly, they did not change their name, but it was an extremely clever organic marketing campaign. Their traffic went up the next week by 70%. That obviously normalized over time, but just that bump. I mean, if you just saw a commercial that said, hey, IHOP's going to have burgers, that would not have generated the same kind of bump. So that was an extremely clever organic marketing campaign that, again, they didn't have to directly pay for. It was entirely organic through social media. Some other examples are that in the bottom left, you'll see Salesforce hosts one of the largest sales focus conferences every year. It's called Dreamforce. And what I think is a really good indicator of their brand is that it's not entirely focused on implementing Salesforce. It's just focused on sales. They have lessons from the top sales leaders, educational seminars around sales and how to be a good salesperson, but it's all backed by Salesforce, which really boosts their brand. And then this example over here on the right side is from The Knot, it was a startup, but it's a wedding planning website. And what I think is really interesting is they've used content marketing to their extreme advantage. So and we're actually going to go into an example about The Knot later as well, but they have an entire publication around wedding planning. Where do you get your rings? Where do you get your dresses? What are the top honeymoon destinations? What are trends around weddings? And that all generates traffic back to The Knot. Now, again, they have to pay a team. They have a large content team to generate this content. But as far as content marketing, it's really a brilliant example. So next, we're going to go into paid marketing. So paid marketing is anything that does have a direct cost. So think about advertising, paying for adverts in newspapers, paying for commercials on TV, paid social media, influencer marketing, which I'm sure a lot of you are becoming more and more aware of. That's paying an influencer on social media to post for you, someone who has a lot of followers. AdWords are Google AdWords boost your SEO. So that's, for example, if Georgia Tech wanted to be known as top research university. It could put a bid on top research university in AdWords and boost their SEO for that keyword search. And then product placement, which we'll go through an example of. Product placement can be either in store, so paying to have your display at the front of the store. For example, if you're selling, I don't know, Campbell's soup, and you want to have the Campbell soup at the front of the store, stores will do that, as well as media. So you can pay for product placement in media, which we'll go through an example of. So top left is my favorite example of product placement. Does anyone watch Stranger Things? Unmute. Nobody watches Stranger Things? Come on.
Yes. Nami here. Yes.
Yeah, I
Big
thought you
fan.
did. I
Yes,
know
big
other
fan.
people do too. Stranger Things is so good. If you don't watch Stranger Things, you should. You should. So Stranger Things had a partnership with Coke, and in almost every episode of Stranger Things, there happened to be Coke prominently on display. So the bottom left is an influencer marketing example. I personally follow a lot of influencer pets, specifically influencer dogs. This is a very important part of my day and my life. It provides excellent breaks during work. But this influencer dog in the bottom left is selling vegan beauty products. What this has to do with the dog, I have no idea. But this vegan makeup company probably paid this dog a lot of money to do this, and this dog is going to get a lot of treats for this influencer marketing campaign. So influencer marketing is growing increasingly popular, especially over the last 5 years, I would say. And there's now software and entire agencies that run influencer marketing. And then on the right is just an example of a traditional ad. This was in a newspaper or a magazine, and it's kind of a funny ad, giving a little dig from Pepsi onto Coke. All right, so I want to talk about brand. Brand is an ephemeral sort of thing. It's intangible. It's hard to explain. But what a brand really is the intangible sum of a product's attributes. So you can't always articulate exactly what a brand is, but you know it when you see it. And this quote is by David Ogilvy, who, if you know the advertising agency Ogilvy, he's considered the father of advertising. So because brand is so intangible, I actually want to watch a video that I think it's the best ad that's been produced this year. I cried the first time I saw it, and it really, really showcases the brand of this company, which happens to be Nike. So can you see this?
Yes,
Can everyone
here as
yes?
well.
Great. So let's do theater mode because it's a really good ad.
We're never alone. That is our strength. Because when we're doubted, we'll play as one.
Holly, it's very choppy. Holly, can you hear me? We can't hear anything. Holly, can you hear? We can't hear anything.
You can't hear it?
If you mute yourself, it will mute the audio too. So if you want to restart and not mute yourself, I think that should solve that problem.
I'm not muted.
Interesting. It's only. Are you on headphones or something? That could also be the problem. Okay. You want to try again?
Events are
Can you hear it?
postponed or cancelled.
Okay.
But whatever it is,
I'm just going to let the
find a
rest
way.
play.
Things aren't fair.
Yeah, Holly, it's stopping when you're not talking for some reason.
What, Amy?
It is not playing audio when you're not talking, or for some reason it's super weird. It's like cutting in and out.
Oh.
We're alone. That is our strength. Doubted?
Raise your
We'll
hand if
play
it
as
stops
one.
playing.
If we're not taken serious. Hear it, Amy?
It is cutting in and out, Holly. Maybe I think Cameron just posted the link to the YouTube clip in the chat. Maybe.
But this is a really good ad, and I'm going to send it to all of you.
It's our strength.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that audio is cutting in now because that's my favorite ad of this year. But I hope that you could get at least the conceptual idea of why it's so great. And obviously, it's a Nike ad and promotes Nike while you don't see Nike until literally the very end. It's 2 seconds for the last shot. You see the Nike swoosh. Everything other than that is just, not even product placement, but just amazing athletes of all different kinds. So what I was hoping is that someone could unmute themselves and tell me why that showcases Nike's brand so perfectly. And anyone can just unmute, or you can put it in chat and we can call on you. Come on. I know someone can give me an answer to this. You all are very smart.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you state the question again?
Yeah, so why does that ad, even though the Nike swoosh isn't even in it until the very end, why does it showcase Nike's brand? What about the people in it or the images
Yeah.
shown showcase Nike's brand?
Well, the first thing is that they are using Nike athletes. So that's one thing, but they're showcasing so many different kinds of people or different athletes. So I think that's kind of why, and just basically what
Yeah,
Nike stands for.
yeah, that's exactly it. So it's athletes from all walks of life, and Nike is really saying that we're for everybody, and they're trying to promote that brand of being inclusive and for everybody, and of being strong, and of being across sports, and of being, supporting powerful athletes and powerful people. And that's why, that really showcases what Nike is trying to turn its brand into. So brand, the point I'm trying to make here is that brand isn't just the logo, right? They weren't just showing they weren't showing the logo till the end. Brand isn't just your slogan or your tagline. It's really all of the things around your company. It's your mission, it's your vision, it's your values, it's the language that you use, it's the visuals that you use. It's all of those things.
Ollie,
So, yeah.
Ollie, we also have two comments in the chat as well. So, Anujit actually said, even with the virus, people are still finding ways to connect through sports. And Juan Carlos Sanchez says, it basically screams, just do it.
Yeah, I mean, yes, exactly, right? And they don't even say just do it, but it's literally like, no matter where you're at in the world, no matter what's going on, we can all come together, we can all do it together. So it's very indicative of what they're trying to do with their brand. That's exactly it. So these are a couple of the things I talked about that a brand should encompass. It's the mission, it's the vision, it's your target audience. So Nike wants to be for all athletes, right? There were folks on there that were just playing basketball in their pool, and there were Nike athletes in the NBA who are in the WNBA who are playing basketball to a crowd. It's your personality, so your attitude as well as your visual identity, which can encompass your fonts, your logos, the photos that you use, and then it's your core values, which are really important for a startup to establish pretty early on, because it's your guiding principles of your entire company. And this over here is a cartoon that I think is funny that talks about personal brand, which is a term that's come up quite a lot in the last couple of years. So let's talk about marketing strategies. And this is getting into the more tactical stuff around how to inform your marketing strategy. So targeting is a very important process that I would suggest doing fairly early on in the development of a startup. So I'm sure you've all heard about lean product strategy, developing an MVP, and doing customer discovery. Targeting kind of goes along with customer discovery. So it's very much informing who are your customers and how do you talk to them. So targeting is identifying the customers for whom you will optimize your offering. This is where I talked about how marketing can inform product and that aspect of things. So the key in targeting is that you want to focus on these specific relevant factors. It might be true, for example, that all of your customers, because you're at a university and these are the folks that you talk to, happen to be young. However, is that age demographic, is that relevant to your product? Is that relevant to your product strategy? It may be or it may not be. The key of targeting is focusing on the things that are relevant. Maybe age isn't a relevant factor, but 80% of your customers being female, maybe that is a critical factor. Maybe you do want to target your product and target your marketing towards female customers. You have to sort of figure that out in tandem with developing your product. So there's demographic factors, which the two I just talked about, age and gender, are demographic. Also geography is demographic. Lots of things are demographic. And then there's behavioral and psychological factors, which are more things like, do our customers tend to shop online, or do they tend to shop in person in stores? Or do we want our customers to buy this product on an impulse, or do we want them to really think about having to buy this product? So those are different factors that you want to think about, and you want to consider both. They're both important to your marketing strategy. So here's some big traps in the targeting process. Again, talking about our relevant characteristics, you might notice all of our customers so far
I
have
can't
been,
see your screen right now. Somebody else is sharing their screen over yours.
oh, weird. Let me try again. Share screen. This will replace someone's screen share. Can you see me now? Is this showing up?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Can you guys see this? Good?
Yes,
Yes.
we are good.
Okay, thank you. So again, irrelevant characteristics. Focus on the things that are going to actually matter to your selling process and to your product development. You may also decide who your customers are too early. If you're still in the product development stage, it may not be exact, and that's okay because marketing is a process and it's constantly iterative. So, there's no shame in trying to figure that out early, but don't get locked into that and assume that those are necessarily your only potential customers. Then there's two different sort of mistakes that even the largest companies make. The shotgun targeting is defining your customer segments too broadly. So, we serve anyone who's between the ages of 18 and 24. That may not be true. And then over segmentation is defining your segments way too narrowly and potentially missing customers. So, we target only women who are 18 who live in Georgia. That might be too narrow. Segmentation is the next process that you're going to go about when you're sort of defining your customer profiles and your marketing strategy. So this means you figured out who those potential buyers are. There's probably a couple of different what we call segments or profiles of buyers. This is the process of grouping them by identifying their relevant differences. So what makes a difference that you can group them in, which is the differentiation process. And then agglomeration means grouping them together between these different groups so that you can adjust your marketing and potentially your product strategy towards these different customers. So what I mean by that is you may develop a product that serves both 18 to 24-year-old men and 18 to 24-year-old women, but the messaging that sells them your products or that makes them want to buy your products is slightly different for those two groups. You would segment them and build different messaging for those different groups. That's segmentation. And the critical thing to think about when you're defining your segments is to group them by relevance, to make them exclusive, so they're different groups, but also to make them comprehensive so that those groups contain everyone within that segment. And by the way, jump in at any point with questions, just go off mute or put them in the chat. This is getting into like the really tactical stuff. So some of the traps in segmentation is to group overlapping segments, so not actually differentiating them enough, and then just a failure to use it productively. If you define 4 segments, but you're speaking to them all in exactly the same way and marketing it to all of them in exactly the same way, there's kind of no point in segmenting, right? And then the last sort of critical strategy tactic I want to talk about is positioning. And this is that process of actually messaging things in different ways to different segments. So it's the company's view on how a set of customers should think about their product or offering. So how do you want 18 to 24-year-old women to think about your product? How do you want 18 to 24-year-old men to think about your product? And this draws on your product's value proposition, which could be different to different customers. Some segments may value a low price. Some segments may not care about the price, but value functionality. Some segments may not care about either of those things, but want great customer support. So it's thinking about what the value proposition to each of those different segments. And this can draw on, again, what we talked about, functional value. So how the product works, if it's, if it plugs into your other devices, whatever it happens to be. The psychological value, does the product make you feel good? Do you feel like you're buying something that's making you feel comforted or making you feel good to the world? This is when you think about a lot of the clothing brands that are pushing that they're using sustainable fabric. That's good for the world. That draws on the psychological value for customers. And then monetary value, which is it a good price? Is that messaging you want to push? We're the most affordable product. So it can be any and all of these things. You don't have to have all of them, by the way. It could be you choose to use one of them. It could be you choose to use all of them. And traps here are, there can be the trap of going too broad. We're the cheapest, best, most usable, most user-friendly product ever in the market. And your customer's looking at you like you're a startup. There's no way you do all of those things. So you want to kind of pick and choose the things that you can really stand behind. And then also you might choose the wrong thing. If you don't do a good job with identifying your accurate target customers and accurately segmenting them, you might think your customers really care about price, and really they don't. So really defining these tactics in order and doing them comprehensively and accurately is super important. So some examples. I happen to really like the Geico Gecko. I think a lot of people do. And the value proposition that they are indicating here, what functional value, when we talked about value, so functional value, psychological value, and monetary value, what are they really pushing here? If you could put it in the chat and maybe you could read it off to me or come off mute.
And Anujit, do you want to unmute yourself, or Cameron also unmuted himself first as well. So
yeah, I didn't want to talk over anybody. Right out the gate, I would say probably emotionally appealing to just the time constraint that a lot of people feel. So making it seem like an efficient and not time-consuming process, and also appealing to the monetary value of just clearly indicating that there is money to be saved when compared to competitors.
I think that's exactly it, right? So they honed in on those two things. First of all, yeah, you're going to probably have a price difference. You could save 15%. But also, this is going to be fast. We get it. You're busy. You don't have a lot of time to think about your car insurance. We'll get this taken care of for you. And the thing I want to point out that is really good about this one is when we talk about being too broad, Geico really does a good job of tempering that. So they don't make statements like, we're going to save you the most money. They don't say, we are the cheapest car insurance. What they promise is 15 minutes might be able to save you 15% on your car insurance. So it's kind of that easy, I get it right away. It draws on some specific value for me, but it's not over-promising in a way that the customer wouldn't believe it. So this is a marketing fail, actually. This is not a successful example. Burger King, a couple years ago, marketed low-calorie French fries called the Status Fries, and they apparently had 40% less fat and 30% less calories. No offense if anyone liked the Status Fries, but the product was quickly killed. I think it was a couple months, and was very much considered a marketing fail. Can anyone sort of tell me why Burger King misunderstood their customers in this case? Anyone want to come off mute? Or chat is good too.
Because people who eat fast food are more into how things taste. They're not necessarily trying to watch their weight. It's not necessarily something of importance importance to them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So if you're gonna go get fries at Burger King, you want them to taste good. You want fries at Burger King, right? Like I've definitely had days where I'm like, I really just want Burger King fries and I want to dip them in a shake and I want them to taste awesome. And their value proposition is that it tastes great and not necessarily, as health conscious. So this was a product that did not work. Chipotle is a marketing win. This campaign, Chipotle went through a lot of marketing fails. I want to just say that, but this campaign happened to be a marketing win. Their profits went up. So this campaign was called their Food with Integrity campaign, and it happened actually. You may remember that Chipotle experienced that big issue with E. coli in some of their ingredients and food safety issues. So this was a campaign that came out of that, and the Food with Integrity campaign was basically, this is all we've got in our food. It's all ingredients you can pronounce. It's real food. You look at it and you know what it is. Like, oh, tomatoes. I know what that is. I see them in the grocery store. It's not no weird ingredients or weird chemicals. And this really drew on both the functional value to customers. So what is in their food? Are they getting good quality? And then the emotional value of consumers that want to eat real food, wanted to eat food that they understood. So this was a big marketing win, and Chipotle, after that E. coli whole issue, actually restructured their whole marketing team and did a really good job of coming back from that. Any questions so far? Anything in chat? Anything anyone wants to bring up?
There's nothing in chat at the moment.
Perfect.
Quick question, just before you move on.
Yeah.
What are some popular avenues for conducting effective customer profiling and research?
It's a great question. So popular avenues for large companies, I know we've mostly talked about large companies so far, and we're going to get into startup examples. Research groups are very effective and very widely used. So research surveys, for example, and there are a few, actually Engage has a portfolio company that does research surveys through a mobile app for corporations. It's called Gauge Insights. But research surveys are very popular, as well as if you want to get like sort of qualitative assessments, research analyses where people actually sit down in a room and either try a product or talk about a product or a service and give sort of qualitative assessments of what would be important to them. Those are a lot of the important things. Now, for something like a restaurant, they really do look at things like Yelp reviews, or other more digital products look at things like customer satisfaction scores. They look at things like how long people are on your website, what are click-through rates for if you look at something, and whether the marketing message sort of worked and whether you clicked through to buy, all kinds of things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. So getting a little more into the tactics, and I want to kind of speed through this because I know we're getting at time. There is a framework called the G-Stick framework, which is your goals, your strategy. We've talked about those, your tactics. So what are you actually going to do the marketing? Are you going to use advertising or content or social media or whatever? Implementation, which is like, if we decide we're using Twitter, how many times a week are we tweeting? And then the control, which is evaluating the progress. Is the tweeting working? Is it growing our Twitter following? Are people buying our product? And that has to be constantly iterative, like I mentioned. If it's not working, what can we do to make it work? This is kind of like a tactical, these are the steps that we follow. And you can see how all of the different things that we've talked about today, the product, the service, the brand, the price, the incentives, communication and distribution, it all kind of fits into, I really like to use Amazon Prime because it's a great example of how marketing touches every aspect of a customer's brand, and Amazon Prime is a great example of that. And these are kind of all the things that fit into that marketing mix. And then really quickly, some tactics on marketing for startups. So there are two different sort of strategies that you want to think about. What I call ramen marketing, because startups, there's the whole idea of someone sleeping on a couch and eating ramen while they start their company, is how do you reach the highest number of your most relevant customers spending the least amount of money? So like ramen, how do you feed yourself and eat calories and not be hungry spending the least amount of money? And that's something you're going to want to think of. And then lean startup marketing really goes off the lean startup principle, which is how do you do a lot of different things that don't cost a lot of money and don't take a lot of time and figure out of those 12 things, these are the things that worked. So we do social media, we do a blog, we do content marketing, we do product placement, we do word of mouth. These two things really sold product for us. You want to think about those two frameworks. So some ideas are social media campaigns like the IHOP campaign that are easily shareable. Think about creating your own hashtag or generating user-generated content, so making people post pictures of themselves while using their product. Build relationships with reporters. It only costs $4, $5, depending on where you go, I guess, to take a reporter out to coffee, and earn media, again, is free. It takes time, but it's free. You can create a category and own it. So similarly to the Knot, which I'll show you in a minute, they created the wedding planning content category, and they are the leader in that. It generates a ton of traffic for them, causes a lot of people to go to their website. You can become a trusted resource. So this is things like webinars, like blogs that say, for example, how Salesforce during their Dreamforce conference has how to be a good salesman, like that, or salesperson. That, has nothing to do specifically with selling Salesforce, but they then become a trusted resource. And then you can create a community. And we'll talk about an example of this that I pulled from the Engage portfolio, which is the Mom Project. So the Mom Project is a company that it's a marketplace, a job marketplace for moms and dads returning to work after having kids. So they post jobs for women or men that are returning to work. And they've created this program called Unity, which is their community of moms and dads returning to work, looking for jobs, just coming back, figuring out the workforce again. And it pairs them with professional coaches, and it really creates a strong, tight-knit community of people that are going to spread the word about the Mom Project through word of mouth, post about it on social media, talk about it to their friends. It's really, really valuable for them. And this is some of the Twitter noise around the Mom Project's Unity Hour and Unity program, and you'll see that they even have their own hashtag called #UnityHour. You can generate, again, organic media. This is also pulled from our portfolio. So one of our companies, Gooder, is a food reclamation business, and the founder, Jasmine Crow, has generated a ton of media. This is from NBC News that, again, spurs people to go to their website and is, essentially free. And then again, I have the example of the Knot because I just really, really like how they have created this entire category all on their own of, basically wedding planning content. That's what it is. And they even generated this wedding industry report that has really nothing to do specifically with selling the Knot or the Knot services, but is very focused on just driving traffic and driving customers and establishing them as a thought leader. And that's all I've got for you today. Any questions? I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen so I can look at people. So we can do questions by putting them in the chat, or I'm really fine with people unmuting.
This is so great, Holly. My question that I would ask, I think some of my students may ask is, so you have your product, your idea, and you're trying to get the word out there, or trying to establish some kind of idea or identity for yourself. Can you think of like the first step, or at least the first couple of steps that you would say every startup across the board need to actually pay attention to or not forget?
Yeah, so it's part of that customer discovery process, which I'm sure you've talked about with all of your students, and I'm sure anyone who's just starting out has at least heard about. So as part of your customer discovery, it's actually your first step in your targeting and your segmenting. You're figuring out who's going to want this product. What are the demographics of our typical customer? What are the behavioral and psychological features of our target customer? Why do they want this product? How is it making them feel? What is the feeling and the emotion that we want to engender with our product? And you want to take really detailed notes on all of this. You want to back it up, so talk to as many people as you can. When you think you know, question it again. Run an informal survey. I mean, this doesn't have to be scientific, especially at first. Like I said, it's lean startup marketing. So figure out what you think is going to be. Then the next step, I would say, when you're thinking about your specific tactics, if you hone in on who that target segment is, where are they? Where are they spending their time? Are they spending their time on social media? Are they spending it reading news? Are they spending it watching TV? Are they spending it talking to their friends? And build your marketing strategy around where those people are.
Thank you. Denise has a question in the chat. Denise, do you want to unmute yourself, or do you want us to go ahead and read that out for you?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. My question is, can you give a startup an idea of how much money to start spending in paid advertising, in particular Facebook ads?
It's a hard question because, I mean, part of it depends on how much money you have, right? Especially for a startup, and how much you're going to be relying on Facebook to generate your traffic. What I would say is, I'm going to give you a percentage. If you think you have X amount of dollars, 100% in the next 6 months to spend on Facebook advertising, and you really want to use that as a significant channel, test it in the first month with 10%. Do not use a lot, because in that first month, what is both great and incredibly dangerous actually about Facebook advertising is the amount of demographic data that they're going to give you about your users. So you're going to figure out in the first, just by using 10% of that money in the first month, really in the first week, you're going to figure out what's the typical age range, the typical gender, the typical geographic location, the typical behavioral characteristics of folks that are clicking through on those paid ads. Those are things that you can get some demographic data off of organic posts, but when you pay for it, the data is just so much more targeted and so much more rich. It's like incredible how much they can actually tell about people. Like I said, incredible and scary. So you're going to get that information. And then what you do is you go in and you target better. So you take the next tranche of your money and you push it towards those features of people that are clicking through to your ads. And your click-throughs are going to go up because you're not targeting, the ads are not showing to people that don't tend to click through anyway. So I would say, I can't give you an exact amount, but I can say spend a little bit at first, figure out exactly who your target is, use those analytics to your advantage, and then spend the rest of your money. And by the way, you can use that information for the rest of your marketing. If you figure out, now, the one thing I would say is keep in mind Facebook's demographics, which tend to skew, now they tend to skew older, actually. So keep in mind that that's like an inherent bias in just using Facebook. But you can still use those analytics to inform more women tend to be clicking on our products, or more men, or more people in the Northeast, or more folks that also like, people are clicking on our clothing product and they also typically like Lululemon. It literally gets that granular. Like, it's very, very tricky and very specific. You can use those to inform the rest of your marketing. I hope that's helpful.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Great advice to break it up. And based on the response that I get from my first 10% of money spent, I can build a strategy around that and use it more effectively. So thank you very much.
For sure. One other thing I would say is when you get those first analytics, also don't be afraid to switch up your messaging and your visuals. So if you thought that you were targeting both genders and you find that 90% of your click-throughs are women, maybe add a few more women to your visuals. Maybe make your photos all women. That's just an example. But don't be afraid to like switch up your messaging or switch up your copy that you use.
Okay, good. So basically do like a test campaign using 10% and then make the adjustments from there going forward. Thank you, Holly.
Sure.
Holly, we have a question from Barat. Barat, do you feel comfortable unmuting yourself and asking your question?
Yeah. Hey there.
Hey.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm just curious about B2B marketing and if you have any advice on, it's a little bit harder to get, at least from my perspective, it's been a little bit harder to gain insights on companies. And I was just wondering, do you have any advice on, gathering that insight?
Yeah, B2B marketing is it's an interesting thing. So I'll give you first the benefit of being a B2B company and a B2B marketer is that the have you all have learned about customer acquisition costs and lifetime value. I'm sure, but it is what it sounds like. So for B2B, especially if you're selling to large businesses, but even small ones, the customer acquisition cost tends to be a little bit higher. You have to put more work into getting those customers, signing customers, but their lifetime value is a lot higher, typically than a consumer. So I, as Holly, mean a lot less when I, buy a Calm subscription, the Calm app, than the company of Lululemon buying the Calm app for all of its employees. Again, just an example. So the hurdles are higher, but the sales are better. That being said, how you can get some feedback beforehand. This is a little bit trickier. Again, you can't do very easy surveys when you're doing B2B. That being said, you can try to talk to folks. So if you're selling to restaurants, go around to some restaurants and try to talk to the folks working there, the folks that manage the restaurant, and see what their pain points are. It's a lot of the same tactics as that customer discovery piece, like I talked about. Try to talk to the folks that would actually be using the product, if that makes sense.
Got it. Thank you.
And then I think there's also a question from Al up here that I'm happy to address, and feel free to
I
jump
have
in.
a question as well.
Okay, great.
I have a question as well.
Let me do Al's first, and then I'll get you, the person who just unmuted.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Perfect. So Al, what advice can you give to a startup looking to build a digital or social media presence from ground zero? Just start. Create a Twitter handle, start using a custom hashtag, build it up over time, engage in conversations in your relevant space. So whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or, anything, learn the hashtags and the typical talk and the influencers in your community, whether it's the wedding industry or the, just logistics supply chain community, whatever it happens to be, learn the relevant folks, start engaging in conversations. Engagement is really critical. And also pay a little bit of attention to your SEO. That's a hard thing to build up in the beginning, especially if you're in a big industry with a lot of incumbents. Like at this point, a wedding startup is not going to overtake the Knot or Zola, for example. I don't know why I keep going back to weddings. But it's a hard thing to do as a startup, but start working on it. So build good SEO practices into your website. Start using keywords in your content marketing and in anything you're putting out there. So think about search engine optimization. Thank you. And there's some very easy tips for scrappy SEO that you can look up on YouTube or on Google. So just start thinking about those things to insert yourself into the conversation. And then there was one more question. Whoever unmuted themselves before, and can you say your name, please, so I know who I'm talking to?
Hi, my name's Tyra.
Hi.
So my question is about educating the customer initially when you're launching the product with marketing. What do you recommend as like the best way to educate them on the product while also getting their attention and trying to convince them to buy it?
That's a really good question. It tends to be a little product specific, but something that I think could be valuable is if it's a market that you're bringing them into, if it's an industry that you're bringing them into, educate them about the market and the industry and the need for a product that does what you do in this space. So the example I would use is like Salesforce. Sales is a really hard discipline in which you need a software tool that can help you stay organized and manage all of your contacts. This is all just me talking to you about sales as a discipline, the market, the industry, the vertical, not necessarily Salesforce. And then later, when you come in with this is what our product does, the person already has in their mind that this is something I need help with. So it's called category creation or category information. You educate them on the category you're in and provide education on that. And then you come in with your product and you it's less salesy and more, we've served as a resource for you. We taught you about this category and about this issue, and we happen to have a product that serves your needs.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
Sure.
So Holly, we're right at time. And so thank you again so much for being here. Thank you so much for all your fantastic insight. I don't know if you have any last words, and then we can wrap up.
This was fun. I enjoyed it. You have I'll send you all the presentation. Good luck, everyone. Reach out. Happy to talk.
Fantastic. And so you'll get an email shortly with the presentation and the link. You'll have about a December. Holly has graciously allowed the presentation to be downloadable until December. And so feel free to do that. And we have a survey as well. So we invite you to participate so that we can provide actual tangible feedback to Holly, how fantastic she did today. So thank you so much. And we see those thank yous coming into the chat, Holly. So everyone loves the presentation. So good job. And so, yeah, so again, it's the collaboration with Georgia State University. Thank you so much for being here. And thanks to Holly and Engage for just making themselves available to provide such wonderful insight about how we can actually move our startups forward. So thank you so much, and feel free to jump off the call whenever you are ready. So.